Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel. It's time to do another installment of my eyeshadow project series. Freya's here, she's saying hello. What, you don't lick my armpit, you weirdo. Today we're doing Coloured Raine. This is what I've been working on recently. These are some of the, more colourful and brighter palettes in my collection. I do have others, but this group of palettes was one I was actually pretty interested about tackling, mostly because for the last few years I have gravitated towards more like soft, neutral eyeshadow colors, and these are not that by any means. These are bright, vibrant, punchy, super pigmented eyeshadows, and like I said, I've not been gravitating towards that. So it was kind of, I guess, interesting for me to sit down and tackle this group of palettes to see if my opinion on how I feel about wearing like bright, colorful eyeshadow, if it has changed or could change. So let's dig into my thoughts on these palettes. I am going to put some images up on the screen as I talk about these palettes. I think I'll put the image here of the palette before I started using it, and it is marked with what I think I will use, what I don't think I will use, and I've added like a new mark on these images, which won't be for all palettes, but I'm thinking mostly for colorful palettes. Shades that I'm just not sure about. Not sure if I want to use them or not. So that's what's going on this side. Over on this side, I'm going to put an image of the palette with the shades that I actually did use. Let's start with the smaller palettes. This one is Beauty Rust. So there's 6 shades in here. I assumed that I would probably want to use them all. However, I ended up not using Nighty Night. Now, look, this is a pretty compact little palette, which is great, especially when you compare it to like stuff like Cheers to the Beauty, which, I mean, there are 13 shades in here, so it is significantly larger, but yeah, I'm not really digging bulky palettes. Anyway, I think my major issue with this palette is the fact that there's only one shimmer in here, which is Dream. Now, this is an absolutely beautiful shade. I really love it. But for me, that really limits what I can do with the palette. It just means that, it's mostly a matte palette, and the only sort of nuance that I'm going to have with any of the looks is like this shimmer. Now, shimmers are actually really important to me because I have small eyes. And when I'm using really pigmented, rich eyeshadows, and especially if we're getting down into like these darker shades, and I'll swatch Nighty Night and Dusk so you can see like these guys are pretty dark. They, like, these sort of shades make my eyes look smaller, so I really need shimmery shades to like have light reflection off my eyelid, which helps to make my eyes have a bit more dimension and not look so beady. So with there only being one shimmer in there, I just feel like it's a little bit restrictive for me. This matte down here, which is Dusk, I found that to be a little bit skippy as well, which I just honestly, like, I'm kind of in an era where I don't even really care too much about eyeshadow, if I'm perfectly frank. Like, I could totally just not wear it at all. Like, I'm happy to play with a colorful liner and put on some mascara rather than fussing too much with eyeshadow. So when an eyeshadow skips, like, that's just a no for me. Like, I'm just not gonna use it. And also, my skin, it's not as tight on my eyes as it used to be. So skipping has become much more of an issue where it's not like evenly blending over the space that I'm trying to put it on. And it's not necessarily an issue of the eyeshadow. This one is a little bit drier in the pan, as opposed to like Daisy, which is super, super smooth and picks up a lot of product. This one is a little bit, yeah, it's just drier, it's more firmly pressed. You can just feel the difference. So, I mean, yes, the formula of the eyeshadow is going to play a part in that, but also so is my age and my skin. I really do love the Dream shade. I think that is beautiful. I also love this one, which is Natural, and this shade here, which is Recharge. These guys are great, and realistically they're the ones that I would gravitate to in this palette. They're the ones that I'd probably use the most. Dusk I just wouldn't reach for. I'm not too sure about Nighty Night. I didn't use it, but also I got to the point with this palette where I did a couple of looks and I was just like, I don't really want to use it anymore. Like, I just don't really see myself gravitating towards this. So I'm going to get rid of it. Next, let's move on to Lovelies. So this is another one that's in the, you know, the same sort of theme of palettes. I'm pretty sure I purchased all of these. I think there was 4 and I purchased them all. I can't quite remember. Anyway, straight off the bat for me, I kind of knew that this was a palette where I was only going to use half of the shades. Pure, Misty Nights, and Romance. They're just not really like, okay, for starters, Pure is like basic. It's not white. It's a little bit like off-white, but it's basically white. And I just, like a matte white, I'm just not really going to reach for it. And then we've got Misty Nights, which is a grey, and we've got Romance, which is a blue. And I think, like, if you like blue, holy shit, like, I don't like blue. I don't wear it. It doesn't look good on me, and it accentuates my under eye bag. So, you know, it is what it is. But I know people like blue, and that's awesome. I love that you love blue, because we need it in the world. And look at that fucking color. It's divine, but I'm not going to wear it. And then we have the 3 shades in the palette that I do like. Look, let's just do it. So we've got High Cutie and we've got Love Love. These are both shimmers. So I'm automatically more intrigued by this palette, or more, it's not the right word. I like this palette more simply because there are more shimmers in there. I think, what was it called? High Cutie. It's a nice shade. It's a pink. I'm wearing pink today. I don't mind pink. It's not my absolute fave. It does have like a nice sort of silvery cool reflect, which is really pretty. And then we have, I think it's called Love Love. Oh my God. I love this shade. It is absolutely divine. I love red eyeshadows. This is right up there with, like, I would say one of the best that I own that is shimmery. The way that it grips to the skin and blends out. It also has a really beautiful, like, soft metallic reflect and a gorgeous, like, true orangey undertone to it. So it's a really beautiful, like, warm feeling red, although reds are usually like cool toned, but it just feels a bit warm because of how it sort of blends out to that orangey, almost like coppery color. I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. And then we have Daydreaming. Now, I thought I'd love Daydreaming because it's kind of like a mauvey-ish pink. But what's funny about it is, and I mean, it swatches terribly, it goes on the eye just fine. But when I blend it out, it actually seems to blend a little bit brighter than I would assume by looking at it in the pan. It's not bad, but it's not, you know, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be, and that's fine. Like, you know, let eyeshadows be surprising. It's actually a good thing. For me, what I want from this palette is this. Like, I want to keep this. Now, when I started this series, one of the first things that I said was, I'm not going to depot any eyeshadows, and I'm not. Like, I stand behind that. I know that that is just not the person I am. So I've depotted eyeshadows in the past and put them into individual palettes, and I don't use them. We all have habits with beauty products. We all know what works for us and what doesn't. And I know that depotting eyeshadows doesn't work for me. So I am not going to depot Love Love. I'm also not going to depot any of the other eyeshadows that people have suggested that I depot while I've been doing this series. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to let myself keep this palette for just that shade because it's special and it's unique, and I don't really feel like, or at least I can't think of anything in my stash that really compares to this. Yes, I've got shimmery red eyeshadows, but this one is quite unique, and I think what I'm going to do is let myself keep this for this one shade, and after this is all said and done and I've gone through my whole collection, I can come back and I can look at everything as a whole and see if I'm just kind of not doing myself justice by keeping certain palettes for certain things. If I can recreate them in my collection, or if I have something that's close enough of a dupe, then I'll get rid of it. But for now, this one I really like, and I'm keeping it just for that one eyeshadow. Moving on to Coloured Raine. This is another one I'm pretty much going to keep for like a single eyeshadow. There might be others in here that I will use, but if you guessed Tigress is like keeping me in its clutches, then you guessed correctly. So when I marked this up, I knew I wasn't really going to use these shades. Again, green is one of those colors that just doesn't suit me all that well. I do think that these are like the formula, I've got to say, the formula of Coloured Raine across the board, although there's some that are a little bit skippy and a little bit drier than others, like it's just phenomenal. Like they know what they're doing with formula, and they're beautiful. This, okay, a little bit skippy there, but I don't care. I don't think it does it, like doing a finger swatch, I don't think does these justice. So, you know, keep that in mind. So these are all beautiful shades. They're just not for me. Now, when we get into the rest of the palette, so I'll swatch the top row. Got Toucan, Clay, which I really like. And then we have Tigress, which is an absolutely beautiful orange shade. These guys, I really like them. Everything there just works for me. I'm happy. I can see myself using them, not on a everyday basis, but if I'm feeling like color, then you know, this is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. And then we have the bottom row. So we have Lioness, which this is so creamy, it's amazing. Amazon Basin, which looks blue in the pan to me, but it's like a really beautiful taupey shade. And then we have Matriarch. I don't like these dark brown shades, these matte dark browns. I think I talked about it in the last episode in this series, where I've been finding that every time I'm using a dark brown like this, the formula, I don't like it. They skip, they look a little bit patchy on my eye. I don't know, again, like, it's probably to do with, you know, my skin. Also the fact that I have really dry skin and not much of anything wants to sit particularly nicely these days. But also maybe my primer is not getting along so well with them. Nice shades. This one I wouldn't use. Like, I just wouldn't. This one, probably a little bit too bland for me. Where I would use this is like over my eyelid, and it's probably teetering on the edge of a little bit too dark for me. But Lioness I really do like. So this is really like, these four here is probably where my love lies with this palette. And again, I'm keeping this specifically for this shade. Sure, I might decide to, you know, get rid of it in the future, depending on what else I've got going on in my stash. But the color is unique and I'm gonna keep it because, spoiler alert, I'm getting rid of everything else from Coloured Raine. Let's move on to Cheers to the Beauty. Now, again, this is one where I was like, I'm going to use half the palette. Probably not even. Up here, I'm just like, I'm not really vibing it. I did use Diamond Jubilee, and it's a pretty shade, but I know that I have silvers in other palettes. I do want to swatch like the blue and the green for you guys, because I know you guys, like, you're out there and you love these. These are really beautiful. Like, oh, that is exceptional. I like green as a color. I just know it doesn't look good on my eyes, but that makes me want to wear it. Some other shades in here that I'm just not really like. Okay, this is like a shimmery sort of blackened blue, or maybe it's more of a black with blue reflect. It is beautiful, but again, I know I can't wear this, way too dark for me. And this one here, which was called Iconic, it's kind of like a silvery taupe, or a taupey silver. I don't know. But these colors I just don't really see myself using. The last two shimmers in the palette are Rosé and Nightingale. So Rosé is the gold, and Nightingale is the kind of old gold shade here. Again, there's nothing wrong with any of these. It's just, I don't see myself really wanting to use the colors. And I think where this palette starts to fall a bit flat for me is the combination of what's going on with these shimmers and then the matte shades. These mattes are the kind of matte colors that I like the most. I think they look the most complementary on my skin, but I don't feel like the majority of them work with these eyeshadows, at least not with the way that I like to wear my makeup. So let's swatch them. This is like a, you know, it's kind of skin tone-ish for me, but it's a little bit more on the like kind of picky peach side. It's probably just a little bit off. These don't swatch well, but I can tell you that they go onto the skin beautifully. I do love Razor Glass. This is an absolutely stunning shade. Okay, down here we have Debonair, which is the last matte. I'm not going to worry too much about how these swatches look. And this one here is Luxurious Bling. So I believe this is meant to be like a highlight kind of deal. It's a beautiful like peachy pink highlight, sort of translucent, slightly frosty white base with like a peachy pink reflect. I do think it's nice, but I know that I already have stuff like this in actual highlight palettes. Now, the thing that I love the most about this palette is certainly what's going on with these 4 shades, but I don't want to pair them with anything that's up here. Like I don't gravitate towards it. It's not my jam. Which means that if I'm going to use this palette, I have to pull it out with other palettes, and I'm just not going to do that. Also, being so like she's big, okay? She's big and she's bulky and she takes up a lot of space. It's just not, it's not who I am in my makeup life these days. So unfortunately, Cheers to the Beauty, it's got to go. Last but certainly not least, let's move on to Queen of Hearts. This is an absolutely beautiful palette, and I know back in the day, this was a palette that launched 1,000 ships for this brand. It was very, very popular, and I mean, so it should have been. It was fantastic. Formula outstanding across the board, and like a really cool color selection if you like these kinds of colors. I do like these kinds of colors. This is right up my alley. Now, there were only 2 shades in this palette that I didn't use. I wasn't too sure if I'd really want to use these guys. I thought they might be a bit too dark for me and they're shimmery, but otherwise I thought, yeah, I'm going to want to use everything. Now, the ones that I didn't use were Crown and Queen Mother. So Crown is it's a sort of shimmery white with that almost like, it feels almost like a cream. And then we have, was it Queen Mother? Yeah. Again, these go on almost like a cream on the skin. Beautiful. Now, the reason why I didn't use these ones is because this one, too dark, as I thought. And this one, I just didn't feel like it really added anything that I wanted to a look. I'm not really into white eyeshadows. It does have like ever so slight kind of peachy golden shift to it, but it's not my cup of tea. Moving on to the other shades, we've got Your Majesty. This one is Princess. Again, not swatching particularly well, but it's a beautiful shade. I really like that shade. And we have Empress. God, I'm gonna want to keep this, aren't I? Next up we have Air, which is like a peachy matte shade. We've got Royal Prerogative, which is just like a, you know, light brown. And then we have Noble Woman. This one is, it looks way too dark on my eyelids. It does have like nice light reflection, but it was too much for me. It just kind of made my eyes look a little bit sunken and beady, basically. And the last shades are Ladyship. We've got Duchess, which is a mid-tone brown, and then we have Dethrone, and you can probably tell that one is too dark for me. I love the color selection in this palette. I think it's beautiful, and the formula is fantastic. I feel like that's pulling very red and making me want to keep the palette. The reason why I'm going to get rid of this palette is because a lot of the shades in here I won't use. Oh, I'm just realizing that I didn't swatch Royal Highness. I was like, hang on, something is missing. So this is like a, you know, sort of taupey brown shade, which we have seen similar colors in some of the other palettes. So what I found when I was using this palette was I don't know if it was like too dark for me or if the pigmentation was maybe a bit too much. Like I said, I'm gravitating to a more like, you know, soft, subtle eyeshadow look these days, even more into the realms of I could just not wear eyeshadow. Like I would totally be happy. So when we're talking about these darker shades, like I know I'm not going to wear them, you know, Queen Mother and Dethrone, just too dark. And like Noble Woman, I mean, beautiful swatched, absolutely beautiful. But again, it just kind of looked a bit too dark on my eyelid, and I didn't feel like I was getting enough light reflection to make things look like defined. It just kind of made my eyes recede. I also found with these purples, and I don't know what, usually I love purple eyeshadow, right? But I just didn't really like the way these looked on me. And I don't know if it's like I'm kind of over purple, could totally be it. But yeah, I just wasn't really like, I wasn't really feeling it. However, when we look at, you know, this section of the palette here, I do really enjoy the colors. I think they all work together. Formula is beautiful, like it's great. But there's 5 shades in the palette that I'm probably not going to use, Crown being the other one, and then the 4 we just talked about. But the real reason why I'm going to get rid of this one is because I feel like I have other palettes in my stash that can replicate the vibes of the eyeshadows that I do like in this palette. And because I am doing a thing which I kind of told myself I wouldn't do, like not keep a palette for like 1 or 2 or 3 shades, because I'm doing that, I think it's more important for me to, you know, whittle down things that can be duplicated elsewhere in my stash, and if I really can't duplicate something and I love it and I want to keep it, just do it that way instead. Doing this project is difficult because I feel like I'm, I guess, trying to say goodbye to the makeup preferences that I had years ago when I was buying these palettes, and you know, the memories that are tied to it, and also the fact, you know, you spend a lot of money on it and you have certain kind of feelings about that. I'm not gonna lie, I feel a bit torn. There is a part of me that wants to get rid of all of them and just be like, no, that is past Hailey, let it go. But then there is also a part of me that's like, but you love the formula and there are some shades in here that are really special. Like, you don't have to get rid of everything. But then I look at, you know, like this, which is more of me who I am now. And I look at this and I'm like, this is not me who I am now at all. But you want to keep this over this, mostly for like a single shade. And I won't lie, I feel a bit shit about that because I feel like, you know, it's kind of hypocritical of what I've said in regards to how I feel about my makeup collection. But also, like, I am very, very conflicted because I really don't want to get rid of those beautiful red and orange shades. Like, they're just beautiful. Oh. And it is moments like this where I think, well, maybe I should just, you know, depot the palette. But you run the risk of ruining the eyeshadow completely. And then, you know, if I change my mind about getting rid of it in the future, I can't give it to someone because there's an eyeshadow that's like popped out of it and I've, you know, ripped up the palette and stuff. So I don't know. Look, I'm just going to do what I want. I'm going to hold on to these guys. I might come back and declutter them later. And I'm going to get rid of these ones. So with Coloured Raine and the whole of the C category completed, I have tested 29 palettes and I've decluttered 12. Let's talk about what's coming up next. So I've just finished C. I've got D palettes, which is just my DIY like single eyeshadow palettes. I'm not going to do that. I did like go through them a couple of years ago. I did a series on it. I haven't used the palette. I think I've got maybe one or two. I haven't used them since, which is just a testament to, you know, how much eyeshadow I have. But I'm not going to do it in this video. I have no interest in it. It can be something I tackle later on down the track. E, I've got one. This is the Amina Pop Rouge Pressed Eyeshadow in the color Brick. It's Brick. It's a little like 3-pan palette. I've already done this one. It's probably not hard to tell. Like, there's 3 eyeshadows in there. F, I have Florasis. So this is one of the, if not the newest, no, it's not the newest. I've got another Florasis palette, which I got in PR. So I've got 2 Florasis palettes, and then we skip G because I don't have any G palettes as far as I can tell. And we go straight into H, where I do have a few eyeshadow palettes. I've got the Hindash palettes, and I also have Mahuda palettes. This is actually what I'm wearing today, the Nude Light palette from Huda, but I also have the Medium and the Rich, and I have the New Nude and the Desert Dusk palette. So that's what I'm going to be working on next. I think Huda will potentially get its own video. The others I will bunch together unless I can get my shit together and start wearing eyeshadow on a daily basis. However, I'm going to say, like, I'm over it. I'm over it. However, in saying that, today when I created this look, I was like, this feels so much more like me. And I didn't really enjoy the process of applying it, but once it was done, I was like, oh yeah, I'm reminded, like, this is why, you know, I gravitate towards this. So I'm hoping that Huda will actually refresh me a little bit. But yeah, I like color. I know I've been off like the bright poppy colors for quite a while. And wearing them kind of was a burden, I'm not gonna lie. So it's probably needless to say that I am quite excited about digging into Huda. And also like Hindash, these palettes, so nice. There's certainly like some color going on in these, but the way that they like apply to the eye, it's just so, it's like ethereal, and I just think it's really beautiful. So I am looking forward to digging into these. I also haven't used my Hindash palettes in so long, or my Huda palettes. I have obviously used this guy recently, but I'll have a little play. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next set of eyeshadow palettes. So I'm going to wrap that up there, guys. Feel free to leave your comments down below. I do want to say a massive thank you to my channel members, and thank you to you all for joining me today, and I'm going to catch you in the next one. Bye.